Hello and welcome to Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. In this edition, we're looking at an evergreen classic car. When people think about classic cars, they probably think of an MGB Roadster, maybe a Ferrari of some sort, but most definitely this is high up the list. A Porsche 911. This is an air-cooled model, which is not too far removed from the original vision for the 911 from the 1960s. This car was built in 1981, so it's about 16 years after the original concept was launched. And it's not too dissimilar, actually. Safety regs dictated that it had these bump-absorbing bumpers, front and back, and this concertina bit of rubber here. There are actually some shock-absorbing pistons behind that bumper so that it can compress and spring back out again, particularly for people in the US who used to bump off each other to park. Charming, but true. Your 911 would hopefully survive unscathed, as would most other cars. In fact, it was legal. They had to absorb impacts up to 5 miles an hour and come out relatively unscathed. And I think that law came in about 1975 in the US, something like that. But that aside, and a couple of other details, this is very, very similar to the original 911 concept. This is a 1981 SC, which means it's a 3-litre flat-six air-cooled engine, effectively an enlarged version of the original 2-litre 911 engine. Porsche at this time looked into longer-lasting engines. They looked into the longevity of the engine. They experimented with different materials for the barrels, the cylinders of the engine. I think around this time they were using alusil. There were various coatings, alusil, nicosil, which was like a crystallized coating that went on the actual aluminium. There was no cast iron sleeve in them or anything like that. Quite advanced technology, and the cylinder barrels would generally, if the engine was driving okay, would generally outlast even the piston rings in terms of wear. Quite extraordinarily hard. I think Porsche pioneered it on the 928, but anyway, in that respect, it was cutting-edge technology. It was pushing the boundaries, but in a lot of other respects, it is the same car. And none the worse for that. This is an immaculate edition. This is just about exactly what most people would want their classic car to be like, I suspect, the purists anyway. It is exactly as it left the factory in terms of specification. It's got this wonderful Pasha trim, as it was called, this psychedelic trim, which again I think came in on the 928 in 1975. I don't know how easy it is to get hold of now, but I suspect not that easy actually, but it's absolutely unmarked, the interior on this car, and there's a reason for that. And that is the car's done 29,000 miles only from new. It's an absolute gem of a 911, this. It really is. It's come in for a service and a few other bits and pieces. We've done a full service on it. One thing just a nerdy bit, we couldn't possibly make a video about a car with a little bit of nerdiness, and that is the windscreen wipers. I can tell how skilled the person who's done the paint work or work on this area has been on a 911, and there's a very simple reason for that, and it can betray how good somebody is when they've been working on this car, and that's the windscreen wipers. This particular one that comes up to the edge of the screen should be straight through the arm like that, and the one in the middle of the car should have a slightly bent, crooked end on the arm there so that it rests square on the bottom of the windscreen. You'd be amazed how many 911s people get them the wrong way around. There's a 13mm nut, M8 thread. On each of those, you just lift the caps up, unscrew them, take them off, work on the car, put them back on again. You'd be amazed how many people get that wrong. So if you happen to be fortunate enough to own one of these cars, do check your windscreen wipers. Same applies whether it's left or right-hand drive. Done a service on the car, or some of it. Corey's going to finish it off, then take the car for a run. And I'm expecting great things of this car. Being a 1981 car, it's the 204 brake horsepower version. It's slightly uprated. The original SC, which was the first 3-litre production car, apart from the limited Carrera 3.0, it was the first 3-litre big production 911. The original output was 184 brake horsepower. So this is the slightly more powerful later version of the SC. Came out, I think they changed it about 1980, early 81, but this is a 204 brake horsepower car, but it is totally factory original. All the panel gaps, the paintwork, everything is absolutely beautiful. And 911s in this period, okay, they rusted quite drastically. I'm trying to remember when they first brought out galvanizing on the 911. I think it was around about 1980, 81 as well. Please correct me, the 911 aficionados out there. That made a big difference. They did know how to rust 911s. This area here, there is a bit of structural strengthening called a kidney bowl here, and that can rust from the inside out due to moisture getting in there and not being able to get out so easily, sweating, the actual metal sweating. Watch the kidney bowls, but this car, it shows Porsche were very proud of their factory paintwork in period. It was quite exceptional. They really did paint them to an exceptionally high standard. They were amongst the best painted cars on the market at the time, the 911s, and you can see why. I mean, this car presents absolutely magnificently. Flat six engine is, as ever, slung out of the back. But being the SC, it's relatively tame. Porsche had poured a lot of evolution into this car. It wasn't quite as tail happy as the earlier 2.7 RS. They'd managed to do some more work on the damping and the suspension and the tyre specifications. I did actually make a video previously on a magnificent 2.7 RS that we had in. And I go into the technicalities of how the engine is slung out the back, etc., a bit more in that video. But yeah, I couldn't resist doing a video on this because it's come in just an absolute jewel of a car. We'll be looking into a few more of its technical idiosyncrasies in a moment. Well, some parts of the 911 are simplicity itself, and that is all for the good. The front suspension on the car is very, very simple, really. It's a McPherson strut setup named after an engineer at Ford called McPherson, who came up with the suspension design. Very, very straightforward. The front springing is done by torsion bars, so there's a bar that twists here as the suspension puts loads in it too or not. And this little blighter here is the ride height suspension stud. So that bears up against the torsion bar there, and as you screw it in, it twists the torsion bar, which raises the ride height of the front of the car. And if you undo it, it's dissimilar threads. So the stud is different from the housing slightly, so that they're locked. It doesn't turn easily, and of course it's got the load on it as well. But if you back it off, you actually lower the front ride height on the suspension, so you can adjust the ride height to whatever you want on a 911 of this era. Yeah, makes it super easy to get the ride height just correct. If you want to, you can even compensate for having loads of luggage in the front compartment. Not that you can fit loads in, but if you happen to be smuggling some gold, I suggest you adjust the ride height on your 911. Yeah, wonderfully simplistic in a way. This is really is the business end of the Porsche 911. The engine here, obviously you've got the heat exchangers here, which are literally that because it's an air-cooled engine. You've got the exhaust ports on the bottom end of the cylinder heads here. It comes through the exhaust system to a single tailpipe here, and this bit is encased in this aluminium here, which diverts air via the fan, the air cooling fan, into the passenger compartment, and that's your heater. It sort of works. It's not stupendous like a liquid cooled car, but it does at least have a form of heating, and it's there almost from when you start the engine, because these are the first parts of the car to warm up, of course. This is being a flat six with hemispherical combustion chambers, the exhaust valves are angled like that. This is the cylinder heads here, and the inlet valves are angled like that. So the exhaust rocker cover castings are actually facing downwards because that's where you adjust the valves here. These have to be adjusted every 12,000 miles, the tappets. They normally go loose. That is to say, they don't recess and go quiet, the valves. They actually go a bit loose, either due to wear of the rocker's bushings or rocker arm bushings, or just slight wear on the valve stem, whatever. But the valve clearance is 0.1 millimetre. It's a tenth of a millimetre or 4/1000ths of an inch. It's nothing. It's a clearance and no more. And the reason for that is that when everything expands, because the engine is air-cooled and all aluminium, it has quite a rate of expansion. You actually end up with more of a valve clearance when the engine is warm than you do with its cold. So the gap actually increases. So 0.1 millimetres is nominal. It's a clearance and no more. And lots of people actually don't adjust these quite small enough, and you end up with a tappety, a clattery engine. This has been freshly done. Corey's done all the valve clearances on this. They should sound beautifully sweet and quiet, these engines, when they are adjusted properly. The top end of the engine, as in the cylinder head area, valve gear, should be silent virtually. You always have to put new gaskets on these and new aluminium washers and nylock nuts with the nylon bit in the middle to seal the thread. If you don't, they leak. They leak oil onto the heat exchanger here, even more so on that side, and you end up getting smoke into the engine compartment. If you have a smoky Porsche inside the engine compartment and it smells of oil, it's more than likely these rocker cover, the lower ones, which are leaking. You've got to get everything immaculate. You cannot reuse the nuts or washers even, never mind the gaskets. They will leak. So it's very tightly compacted into here. The timing chain tensioners on these were a self-contained unit, a little piston with a roller wheel on the end, and they could fail. If they broke or lost pressure, your timing chain tension disappeared on that. There's two, one for each bank on that particular bank. And I have known that to happen. I've actually had to rebuild 911, an SC actually, engine in the past, because the tensioner failed. And when they brought out the Carrera 3.2 Porsche in 1984, I think, they actually modified the tensioners. It's only been in production for 20 years or thereabouts. They finally modified them to a pressure-fed tensioner, which worked infinitely better. A very compact design. We will have a turbo coming in the near future, which is a whole different ballgame again in terms of compactness and complexity, but essentially the same. The car it's not like a new pin, but it is all extremely clean and tidy and businesslike. I mean, there's hardly anything on there. It's all just beautifully clean and the car has obviously done a genuine 29,000 miles, which is a treat, really. Now that Corey's finished what we needed to do, we'll get it down on the ground and we'll take it for a run and see how it actually feels on the road. I suspect it's going to be lovely because, as I've said before, an original unrestored car almost always drives better than a car that has had a nut and bolt restoration, and that's because the people who've done the restoration don't have that final intuition, that final feel, that final touch to make the whole car of a piece as much as the manufacturers did at the time. So we'll see. But that's the heart of an air-cooled 911. I can already tell that this car feels what you might expect to be, for want of a better way of putting it, as tight as a drum. All the controls just feel like new, really. The gear change feels as ghastly as ever on pre-88 911s. Porsche really had no excuse for the gear change. I've banged on about this before. It really does let the side down, and the later G50 gearboxes that were fitted from, I think, 1988 onwards, the gear change was so much different. It was so much better. It's the way it should have been all along, really. Other than that, I mean, there can't be many original, unrestored, 29,000 mile Porsche 911s around, particularly the SC. I guess with the turbo cabriolets and the really rare ones, there is an element of them being in a large collection, and therefore, you know, one of many that the owner could select. I did look after a Minerva Blue 911 SC, one of the first, a 1978 car, 3 litre, and that was 184 brake horsepower, and it really didn't feel that fast. The interesting thing is the oil level gauge, that one there, does not register until that one starts to register. That's the oil temperature gauge. You've got an oil cooler, one on the engine and one in the front wheel well here, and they are thermostatically controlled, so they don't actually start working until the engine oil temperature's warmed up a bit. But yeah, the temperature gauge is just starting to move now, and the oil level gauge will, there's all sorts of quirks to these cars, as there are with a lot of cars like this. Ferraris have their quirks. I mean, the gearbox in those is pretty awful as well, in the fact that second gear synchromesh doesn't last that long if you work it hard. But yeah, it just still feels so absolutely tight. There isn't a squeak of play in the steering, nothing. Even the stalks feel brand new, as you'd expect of a 29,000 mile car. Grand Prix white would not be my choice, but there are worse colours. But even the Pasha trim is immaculate. The seat still feels lovely and supportive. Very smooth ride. Again, it's a world apart from modern Porsches, dare I say it. Not jarring at all. And of course, the other thing about these is the ergonomics are a bit of a nightmare. You've got two windscreen wiper controls. One is the stalk, and the other one is a intermittent wipe here on the dashboard. You've actually got two. You've got this little knob here. This car is used. It's now doing more miles than it has done in its life. It's the sort of car you just, it's amazing. You just feel you could jump into this and drive. I feel as though I could drive to Saint Moritz or Geneva just like that. I think I would get far more tired before the car did. It just feels as though it would do that journey in the twinkling of an eye. The whole car just feels beautifully set up. It really does. You can definitely tell the difference between the 184 brake horsepower. I don't quite know how Porsche arrive at that figure. It's so precise. I'm surprised there isn't a decimal point digit in there as well. But I can feel the difference between this car and a well-sorted earlier 184 brake horsepower SC. There is a difference. Again, it's just, you just literally torque this car around corners. It's just so delicious. It's probably one of the most communicative car steering systems ever put into a car. The weighting, the caster effect, the way it rides over bumps, the way it isolates, all these things just make it a very, very pleasant place to be. Just sort of, it's so difficult to describe it. It's almost like a magic carpet. We'll get it on the straight and then see about those 204 horses. Okay, here we go. Oh yes. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Whereas the older SCs, the older 911s, even the 2.7 RS at 210 brake horsepower, lighter than this, and I suppose that's the exception, actually thinking about it, but most of them, the 2 litres, 2.2s, they make the same noise, they have the same lovely steering, but they don't go as well as this. coming on the cam at about 3,500, 4,000. Just feel the gas flow beginning to work in the engine. This is a lovely example of a 911 SC. I doubt there are many better. We've been right through this car. It hasn't wanted for anything, really. Anything it needed to have, it's had, which was precious little. Very nice. You can do almost anything you want in this, apart from back off when you're near the limit mid-corner. Then it all starts to go wrong, but this is just wonderful. There are so many not very well sorted 911s out there. The early ones in particular, up until a few years ago, just weren't worth the money for people to spend on them. This is most definitely well sorted. Corey's done a magnificent job of working on this car, actually. I think the customer's going to be delighted when they drive this car. So there we are, temperature gauge has come up, and as you can see, the oil level also has come from 0. Don't ask me why, but they all do that, sir, and that's just about right. It needs to be just a fraction below the maximum when it's warm. Strangely enough, different manufacturers have such different ways of measuring oil pressure. With the Jaguar V12, for instance, it's 63 pounds per square inch at 3,000 RPM, would you believe? And Porsche, with this engine, it's 5,000 RPM. Interesting that they would choose the engine at very high revs to actually check the oil pressure. In my personal opinion, it's far more important at idle, or just as important at idle. But obviously they can calculate back. They wouldn't leave it to chance. They would be able to calculate back from the oil pressure at 5,000 revs to what it should be at idle. But anyway, I digress. It's lovely. Well, that concludes another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop video. Please remember to subscribe. It does make a difference. And thanks for watching, and we'll be back with something else very soon.